Welcome back to A2Z Fintech, part two of our anniversary special double digest. This is rewriting the rules of agentic commerce, what we've called from the buy button to the machine payments protocol.
Two of the most exciting things in Zubin's life. If you've just joined us, go back and listen to part one. There is genuinely a thesis that runs across both of these, and the second half lands harder if you're with us start to finish. Fair warning. We're now going under the hood of the thing Stripe is betting the company on, agentic commerce.
Part one was the who. Part two is the how, specifically how money flows when the buyer is no longer human. Because, as Patrick said this week, in the not too distant future, agents will account for most online transactions.
And as we've said before, this is not the buzzword version of agentic commerce. This is a fundamental rewrite of how value moves on the internet. The buy button, the little blue rectangle that defied 25 years of e-commerce, is about to be replaced by a protocol you probably never have heard of.
A year on, the architecture has actually landed, right? The protocols have names, the wallets have launched, the standards are being adopted. OpenAI, Google, Meta, Microsoft, all publicly committed.
Which means part two's job is to give you the playbook. 3 deliverables for the next 30 minutes, the Agentic Stack, refreshed for 2026. The 4 Horsemen, who's playing for what, and a 6, 12, and 24-month plan your strategy team can execute.
Obviously, strap in, and I obviously need to do my customary disclaimer. We are just two dudes riffing on this. None of these opinions that we share on this podcast represent anything for the companies we work in. I'm going to try to do our best, or we're going to try to do our best to get you out of class before the bell rings.
Okay, Zubin. Last season, we built the 3-layer agentic stack: discovery, execution, safety. Walk us through what's changed in 12 months.
It's the same 3 layers, but each one now has production-grade plumbing, where a year ago, we were sort of hand-waving. And layer 1 is discovery, the merchant-to-agent handshake. A year ago, an agent had to scrape your website like, a Lycos crawler. Today, there are 2 protocols doing the heavy lifting. ACP, which is the Agentic Commerce Protocol, which was published by Stripe and OpenAI, obviously now adopted across the entire ecosystem. And then UCP, which is the Universal Commerce Protocol, which was co-authored by Google, along with other industry experts, which run Gemini and within Google's AI modes.
Yeah. I guess the discovery problem was solved at the standards level. The gap was adoption, right?
That's right. The discovery piece is a key part of it. But layer 2 is equally as important, which is around the execution, the actual money movement, right? Let's go back 12 months ago. There was no real machine-to-machine payment standards. Today, we have MPP, which is the Machine Payments Protocol. We talked about this in the prior episode, which is co-authored by Stripe and Tempo, live since April, and introduced a brilliant new primitive called sessions. Think of it as the OAuth for money. The agent authenticates once, you authorize a spending cap, and it streams micropayments continuously as it consumes services.
Zubin, OAuth for money. This is the cleanest one-liner I've ever heard you deliver. And it's probably the answer to the question we've just teed up. The buy button is dead. MPP is what replaces it.
But what makes MPP special is that it's interoperable. Right? Stripe extended it for cards. Visa adopted it for their Agent Ready program. Lightspark extended it for the Bitcoin Lightning.
Yeah.
Coinbase has their own implementation. MPP is genuinely becoming the TCP/IP of agent payments. Rail fungible underneath, protocol shared on top.
All your best one-liners. Now, layer 3, safety. Tell us a little bit about that.
Layer 3, safety, where the most interesting evolution has happened. If you go back a year ago, the question was, did my human authorize this charge? Today, the real question is the agent itself even legitimate?
Yeah.
From Stripe's own data, they shared this at sessions as well. 1 in 6 attempt signups on AI services running on Stripe is a bad actor, right?
Wow.
Free trials abuse have more than doubled over the last 6 months.
So the trust layer has gone from permissioning question to, I guess, an identity question.
Exactly, right? And architecture answer, right? So think of it as like verified credentials for agents and verified intent for transactions, new radar models distinguishing the legitimate agents from fraudulent actors, Anthropic, OpenAI, and even Microsoft signing agent identified headers into their API calls. Visa and MasterCard, alongside the FIDO alliances, have also sort of joined in building agentic commerce identity standards.
This is really interesting, Zubin, because one of my jobs to do straight after this podcast recording is my dad, as you know, passed away last year. And my mom just got a message that, his Amazon account is active, right? I have to go back there and figure out what the heck's going on there. Uh, this is a real problem, and it's doubling and tripling, as you say, all over the world. Now, the agent, as you said, the agent is now an actor with a reputation. That's kind of philosophically wild.
Yeah, and it changes the entire threat model, right? Like in the fraudster of 2026 isn't stealing your card. They're stealing your tokens. Millions and millions of fake accounts to drain sign-up credits, inference costs on free trials, pick up usage billing they never intended to pay. Stripe Radia's biggest upgrade this week is explicitly defending against token theft.
That's incredible. So 3 layers, functional plumbing on each. Protocol war isn't over, but the standards, you'd say, are converging.
Convergence is the operative word, right? Like a year ago, this looked like a Betamax versus a VHS. Today, it looks more like a Wi-Fi standard scenario, right? Multiple consortia, slightly different flavors, eventually settling around and interoperable.
So stack mapped. Now it comes to the strategic question. Who is playing for what? I like to call it the 4 horsemen in this race, Zubin. Stripe, OpenAI, Google, and then Visa and MasterCard, who I'm just going to count as one because they kind of play the same hat. Each one is playing for a different end game.
Lay it out, Aman. Let's hear this one.
So horseman number 1 is Stripe. The end game, be the rails. They want to be the network underneath every agent transaction, regardless of who issues the agent or who fulfills the order. Tempo is the chain, Bridge is the orchestration, Privy is the wallet, Blink is the identity. They are happy to play with everybody, OpenAI, Google, Meta, Microsoft, Anthropic, because it doesn't matter to them whose brain initiates the buy as long as the dollar flows over their pipe.
Dare I say the Switzerland of agentic commerce play, right? Like neutral, picked by everyone, charges a small token on every flow.
I tell you, Zubin, you're on a roll with your one-liners. It's a shame your wife is out of town. Horseman number 2, OpenAI, the end game. Be the brain, not the back office. Last year, as we covered in episode 14, they flirted with the instant checkout on Etsy. They kind of walked it back quite quickly. The lesson they took, I thought, was payments are dirty work, and they cannot afford to get distracted from the LLM race. So they co-authored ACP with Stripe and shoved the entire transaction layer back to the merchant. You want to originate the buy, not settle it. Smart, disciplined, very founder mode.
But I would argue that it kind of leaves this huge margin on the table, right? Like which kind of plays exactly with what Stripe potentially wants.
Yeah, and that brings us to horseman number 3, Google. The end game for them is protect the search business by extending it into agents. Google's AI mode and the Gemini app do native shopping powered by UCP. JD Sports is a launch partner, and the strategy is don't let ChatGPT steal the discovery moment. If users start asking their AI agent to find them shoes, Google needs that moment to happen inside Gemini, not OpenAI.
That's right. And the genius is Google doesn't need to own the payments, right? They just need to own they need to own the intent of the internet, so to speak, right? And they're Stripe's biggest beneficiary in this whole story, right? Like every UCP transaction settles through the Stripe's agentic commerce suite under the hood.
Yeah. And that brings us to, I guess, horseman number 4, the collective horsemen of Visa and MasterCard or the networks. The end game there is don't get disintermediated. Visa launched Agentic Ready, expanded into APAC and LATAM this week, if I'm not mistaken. MasterCard, as we covered, both BVNK and launched their own stablecoin program. Both have signed up to MPP. Both partner with the FIDO Alliance on agent identity.
Yeah, but Aman, the problem is structural, right? Like the card networks were built for a world where humans entered sort of 16-digit numbers into some sort of, form fill. In a machine-to-machine world, the card is just one of the many possible rails, right? In this case, the Visa and MasterCards are sort of fighting to remain one of the rails rather than the rail.
I suppose it's a bit of strategic asymmetry. Visa makes money on every swipe. Stripe makes money on every outcome, if you'd like, swipe it or not. Fiat, a stablecoin, card, a wallet, I guess. Stripe is kind of agnostic to the rail. Visa, on the other hand, is the rail. In a world where rails are commoditized, I guess being agnostic wins.
And I don't know if you were following this weekend with the Kentucky Derby, we did cover the 4-horse race. But I think there's a dark horse in this one as well, much like the Kentucky Derby. What about Alibaba? What about China?
That's a really good point. Quen the brain, Taobao the marketplace, Alipay the rail. They processed 120 million agent transactions in a single week last month. But most of them, Zubin, were red packet subsidies. They were giving away like 10 million bubble teas to train the models on the rail intent. My kids would have been really excited about that.
Yeah, but we've talked about this a lot, the command versus demand economy. I would, in this case, the protocol economy, I would also say, right? All of these can scale, but there's only one that can interoperate globally.
True. Look, by the way, I go back to my previous comment. I just want to clarify, my kids are into bubble tea, not into payments. But we've talked about the walls of WAM. We framed it, I think, last season. The protocol economy will eventually win in the West. The walled gardens will keep winning in China. India's a bit of a wild card. UPI plus the new agent payment stack is starting to look like a third module, that sort of like model that fuses both. But I guess we've mapped this, so Stack has been mapped, Horsemen have been mapped. Now, Zubin, the deepest technical move for Sessions 2026, and the one that quietly is rewriting every business model in the next 5 years.
Aman, I hate to admit, but I think it's time for a Prof Z moment. It's been a while since we've had one of those.
You lie. You look forward to this.
Because there's one technical concept from Sessions this week nobody's talking about with the same level of awe, which is streaming payments.
I love it. Take us through it. I'll be the smart but slow kid or student on the uptake.
Promise not to cold call you. Cast your mind back on how money actually moves today. You buy a coffee, merchant batches the transactions at the end of the day, acquirer settles with some sort of 2 plus 1, 2 plus 2. The whole system is built on this assumptions that payment is a discrete event that happens after the transaction.
Holds for almost everything we do. Buy a coffee, pay a salary, subscribe to Netflix, discrete events.
But what happens when an AI agent burns $1,000 of compute tokens in 5 minutes? Or when an agent calls another agent's API, which calls a third agent's API, and each costs a fraction of a cent?
Wait, batch settlement breaks? You either, I guess, teacher, you either overextend credit or you get bumped, or you sort of undergrant to access and I guess the agent stalls.
Exactly, right? Like the credit card rails simply cannot handle micro settlements at machine speed, which is why Stripe announced streaming payments. It's really built on Metronome, the usage-based billing model that they bought in December, plus Tempo, plus stable coins as a unit of account. Here's the metaphor, right? Like money is becoming a video stream, not a file you download once, but a constant trickle of bits moving in real time as value is delivered.
Kind of like Netflix instead of Blockbuster, I would imagine.
Like Netflix instead of Blockbuster, or for older listeners, the Spotify replacing the iPod. The unit of consumption changed. Same content, same value, completely different commercial logic.
And the implications are wild. If money streams in real time, credit risk changes, floats disappear, subscriptions become outdated, pay as you go becomes pay as you token. The CFO's job kind of changes overnight.
And the CFO of the AI company in 2026 is doing something no CFO in history has had to do, reconciling micropayments at the granularity of token consumed. A single conversation with Claude or ChatGPT generates thousands of billing events, right? At a cent floor. These are payments that cannot be processed on traditional rails. Visa and MasterCard charge 30 cents per transactions. The math just breaks instantly.
And which is why I guess Stripe pushed streaming payments onto Tempo on stablecoin rails on a high throughput chain. You could, I guess, do micropayments at a fraction of a cent. The economics just work.
Yeah. And here is the second order effect that ripples through every business model in the next 5 years, right? Software as a service was built for monthly subscriptions. The next era is software as a stream. You pay for what the model just thought in the moment it thought it.
Zubin, you've done it. Software as a stream. That's going to be in a billboard somewhere. So we've covered the agentic stack. We've covered the four horsemen. We've covered the streaming payments. Let's do what we always do at the end of part 2 and turn the camera back on the listener. If you're a founder, an operator, a CFO listening to this on a treadmill in Singapore or a commute in London, what do you actually do about all of this? Zubin, give us the playbook.
Yeah, and Aman, we've played this back over the last couple of weeks, kind of culminated with this. But I would say there are sort of 3 plays, right? The 6-month play, the 12-month play, and the 24th-month play, at least based on what we're seeing in the market.
Yeah.
The 6-month play, get your data hygiene right? This sounds boring. The single biggest determinant of whether your business will exist to agents in 2027 is whether your product catalog, inventory, pricing, and policies are exposed via clean machine-readable APIs. Not human-readable, machine-readable. If your inventory still lives in a PDF and your prices change via sort of manual uploads, you don't exist to a Gemini agent shopping on your behalf of your user. You're essentially invisible commerce.
Touche, Zubin. Data hygiene is the new SEO. Brands without clean APIs are the brands that essentially won't show up when users ask the AI to find them a winter jacket. Their existence is functionally optional.
The analogy I would give is when the internet first came around, people would took their machine magazines and just make them internet ready.
Yeah.
You can't just take your existing inventory and just assume that the AIs would read it. You do need to make it what now is the AEO, the new SEO, agentic engine optimization.
By the way, this is the benefit of having 2 dudes who've been around the block. They can remember things from history.
True fact. Let's play out what that 12-month play looks right? Like, pick your protocol strap. It doesn't need to be on every single protocol. Pick one of them, right? Whether it's the ACP, UCP, and ship a real implementation. Maybe add MPP for execution, add verify intent for safety. Cost in 2026, a small engineering team for a quarter. Cost of not doing it in 2027 is when your competitors are getting agentic traffic and you're not. Is your category position.
And implement it as a protocol in a protocol agnostic way. Don't bet on a single horseman.
That is true.
Right? Build that abstraction layer. Zubin knows a thing or two about this in his day job. Let that underlying rails win or lose without breaking your own business.
Yeah. And keeping church and state separately, this is exactly what we're working with a lot of our clients as well in my day job. But that's a different topic. 6 months discovery, 12 months really around execution. 24-month playbook is really reimagine your business model for streaming. And this is a hard one, right? Because most subscription businesses are going to face an existential question, which is, should our customers be paying us monthly or should they be paying us per event, per token, or maybe even per outcome?
Yeah. And, and while Zubin struggles with the word existential, most leadership teams are going to struggle with something else and get it wrong. They will be optimizing for the current MRR instead of the future TAM. The companies that win the streaming economy will be the ones that voluntarily cannibalize their subscriptions before someone else does.
My favorite story, and a lot of people know this, my wife has been at Netflix for about 15 years. And one of my favorite CEOs is Reed Hastings, right? And if you kind of go back and look at the point in time, actually, my wife was there, Reed Hastings burning DVD by mails to essentially building streaming. And he did that, right? Steve Jobs killed the iPod with the iPhone. Andy Grove pivoting Intel out of memory into microprocessors. The pivot's going to be the key.
And there is a fourth play, Zubin, the founder mode play, the cultural play, if you'd like, across every company we've covered this season and the last. The ones who win this transition are the CEOs who treat AI not as a feature, but as a replatforming event. Patrick Collinson's two imperatives: reinvent your product, reimagine how the business works.
Which means you don't put AI in the corner of the org chart and let it grow. You essentially put it in the center and let everything else reorganize around.
And quite frankly, this is the difference between every legacy bank we've covered this season and every neobank. The neobanks are replatforming around AI at scale and pace. The legacy banks are bolting AI onto their existing platforms. The gap, I predict, is going to be widening by the quarter.
All right, Aman, we've covered a lot this episode, but before the mic drop, let's just acknowledge the thing. This is our anniversary episode. We're not to, right?
All right, go for it.
Yeah, like 12 months ago, we were two operators with strong opinions on this chaotic shared Google Doc. Sometimes I feel we still are, though. But today, 30 episodes shipped, Stripe, Nubank, PayPal, OpenAI's dev dates, the protocol wars. What am I missing? The unbankable creator economy, the most recent one with MasterCard and BVNK. Oh my God, these are endless, right? And when I think about this episode, we close the circle on where the whole thing started.
You're making me nostalgic again. And here's the thing I genuinely did not expect. Lessons we have taken from doing the show are roughly identical to the lessons they have given us. 30 episodes have been, in a way, a 30-week MBA on what happens when a small idea taken seriously compounds.
And we're just getting started, right? This flywheel is real. Each episode has taught us how to be slightly better hosts. Each guest, each frame, each mic drop makes the next one easier, right? Our audience has grown and I'm loving it, right?
Yeah.
The LinkedIn comments get smarter. The WhatsApp messages from former colleagues get even more interesting. And my favorite, bumping into fellow industry nerds, fellow payment nerds, fellow fintech nerds, all talking about how they're listening to our episodes and loving the content.
Yeah, and I think for me, the most rewarding part has been hearing from listeners who are actually builders. The founder in Lagos who messaged us about Indie Worker episode. The product lead in Mumbai who remain nameless, but we both worked with, who used the WAM framework recently in a board deck. The CFO in Dubai, in the middle of all of this chaos, who quoted the telco trap framework back to me while on a call. And actually even more recently than that, I bumped into a student in Singapore who said that episode 15, I don't even remember what it was about, was the first time that history of banking made sense to her.
And this is the founder mode payoff, right? You make the small things, you ship every week, you don't quit when the analytics dip, and eventually the small things become load bearing for a few thousand people.
Which is in miniature exactly what Stripe did from 2010 to 2026, and just with several more zeros.
And on that note, the second mic drop of the night, Aman, come on, let's take it home properly.
Okay, here's what I've been holding out for the end. Every payments company that came before Stripe had a ceiling, Zubin. Visa had a ceiling. MasterCard had a ceiling. PayPal, as we said 2 episodes ago, hit its ceiling and is now slowly being, broken apart by your man, Mr. Lors. Square hit its ceiling and is now block. Adyen arguably hit its ceiling and is now an excellent but bounded business in Amsterdam.
Man, you're onto something here, right? Stripe doesn't have to have a ceiling, or rather, Stripe's ceiling is the size of the entire economy itself, because what they have actually built underneath all the announcements and the conferences and the developer love is the index of global economic intent. Every business on Stripe is a node. Every transaction is a signal. Every API call is a data point. Every agent is a participant. And the more agents come online, the more useful that index becomes.
You know, Zubin, I couldn't have said it better myself, and this is why I love doing this with you. This is the Google move. Page and Brin built the index of the web. The Collison brothers are building the index of the economy. Same playbook, bigger tab, more compounding, quieter because money is less glamorous than search, but in the long run, more lucrative. And I think 100 years from now, when people write the history of how financial services were replatformed in the 2020s, they will not write a chapter called The Rise of Payments. They will write a chapter called The Rise of Economic Infrastructure. And the protagonists of that chapter will not be banks. It will not be a network. It will probably not be a wallet. It will be a company that started with 7 lines of code and ended up indexing the world's commerce, the same way a company 25 years earlier indexed the world's information.
So what you're saying is Stripe is not the next Visa.
Stripe is the next Google. And the moment we, as the fintech industry, wrap our heads around that, the next 10 years suddenly becomes a lot more sensible.
On that, Aman, I'm out of words, which frankly never really happens.
Anniversary mode, Zubin.
Anniversary mode, my friend.
12 months, 30 episodes, 128,000 words, and we counted, of script. A genuinely embarrassing number of unfinished WhatsApp drafts, and the most fun 2 adults can have without playing Premier League fantasy football.
To our listeners in San Francisco, New York, Singapore, Lagos, London, Mumbai, Sydney, Sao Paulo, Dubai, and the increasing number of you who message us from places we have to Google to confirm exist, thank you, genuinely.
And if you've stuck with us from episode 1, you're one of the reasons we keep shipping. If you just joined, welcome back to the back catalog. You have a beautiful Sunday afternoon ahead of you.
Well, 2 quick favors before we go. If this episode makes you think, hit that subscribe button. We try and drop every Wednesday or every other Wednesday. If it makes you laugh, share it with one person at your firm who needs to hear it. And if it makes you angry, leave a comment. We read every single one of them. Ping Aman on me on LinkedIn or an email. The best ones become usually our next episodes.
The protocol war is just getting started. The agents are just learning to spend. The Collisons are not stopping. And Zubin and I, foolishly, are not stopping either. Year 2 starts next week. Stay curious.
Stay purposeful, my friends.
And on this anniversary,
stay founder mode.
This is A2Z Fintech. Yeah, non-obvious insights. This is A2Z Fintech.